Welcome to the Talkin' Shed podcast with your host, Adam Finnick, where we talk all things farm equipment. Tune in as we interview farmers, industry leaders, and talk about our own dealership story. Follow along as we talk about topics like cover crops, nutrient placement, and things that make your farm and every farm across the country different. You're listening to the Talkin' Shed podcast, and thank you for tuning in.
Well, guys, today we are here at my parents' house. We had some Hardi training here this morning, and I kind of just let the cat out of the bag on what we're going to be talking about today. We've got Mike Flatt, CEO of Hardi North America, the sprayers, of course. And Mike, how are you today?
Doing great.
Awesome. So this morning, we had some training. The news has been out for a little while, but this is our latest lineup of products, the Hardi sprayer. And we had guys come in this morning and we did some training. Let's just jump right in and talk about the sprayers themselves, Hardi as a company, and what they do.
Yeah, as you saw today, and as most people know about our products, it's been a very, very consistent product over the years. It's obviously had some innovation as times evolved and as the consumer needs have changed, but you've also seen a very, very stable product as well. So spare parts haven't changed a whole lot over the years. 40-year evolution, of course they have, but we're not leapfrogging technology year after year where it causes a huge support situation. So our guys have gotten really, really intimate with the product, and we like to convey that to the dealer as well, because the ultimate goal as we're partnered together as manufacturer and dealer is that the end consumer has a really, really good customer experience. So that means from the purchasing side, when they make that purchase decision, all the way down to 10 years down the line when something's not working right. So from a product standpoint, we're a European design product. They give us a finished product, and then we take about 80% of that and we release that to the North American market. So what a farmer in, say, Ontario or Alberta or Illinois or Ohio, what they want is maybe not what somebody in England or Scotland or the Ukraine or another place in the world would want. So we all adapt them a little bit to our individual markets. So the bulk of the engineering comes from Denmark, from overseas. They supply that kind of core product to us, and then we do the final tweaks to make it fit our market.
I see.
Yep.
There's, of course, a lot of different sprayer options out there. You know, the self-propelleds are really gaining some steam. You've got John Deere, who's purchased Hagee, and, of course, the Case IH and several others. Why Hardi? If a guy wants a sprayer,
yep.
Why?
That's a good question. We answer that one all the time. There are so many good pieces of equipment on the market today. I equate it a lot to pickup trucks or cars. It's hard to make a bad choice in a piece of equipment today.
Right.
If you're going to get a self-propelled sprayer, you're going to get a trailed sprayer, you're going to end up with a good piece of equipment. I mean, the market gets rid of the junk.
Yeah.
So now there are some really, really low-cost options out there, but we're not targeted at that. I mean, we're typically going after that premium customer that happens to want an appeal for a trailed product. So that fits our niche, but then why ours specific over the competitive products? The main thing that we've done over the years is we've designed this sprayer to work together. We take some dings from time to time because our products are proprietary. So the pumps, the nozzle bodies, the tips, the valves, those are not off-the-shelf products that are commonly available everywhere. But that's been a singular designed thought process from the parent corporation for all of these components to work together hand in hand. You guys heard about the DF4 system, mm-hmm. right? That was completely developed by our engineers on our trailed sprayer to work the way that it works, to provide a redundant system for the best application that we know how to make. And that's really why I say that people want to go with our products, is because it was all designed to work together. It's not a combination of off-the-shelf components that you have to make a compromise on how they do rate control, how that we do boom height control, how that we integrate the hydraulics in connection with the tractor. So all those things are purposely done and very well thought out. But that's only a piece of the pie, right? Because the product is only one segment of that. So then behind that is a dealer network that takes care of that product. And we're pretty picky about who we select as dealers. So if you're going to select our product, you need to be considering who's going to be that field representative or who's going to be the people that are going to be taking care of that product. This is not a 2 or 3 or 4 year product. This is sometimes a lifetime product. Mm-hmm. We're still servicing products that have been in the field for 20 plus years. Every day we take phone calls on stuff that's been in the field for 20 plus years. Mm-hmm. How many of our competitive products do you see that have been out there? So that kind of superior engineered product is going to be out there for a very long time and then going to be taken care of, hopefully by a very good partner in the field. And then behind that good situation for support is us supporting that dealer and the end consumer ultimately as well. But, it's kind of dual layer support. So excellent product, good infield support, and then good manufacturer support on top of that. I think we're pretty hard to beat when you put all that together.
I would agree. I mean, we carry a lot of different short line products, and I was very impressed today with the backbone that Hardi has. A lot of companies say, oh, if you need help, call support. But I mean, not only do you have a support line, you've got a manual that literally reads on the front something along the lines of the sprayer textbook. Mm-hmm. You've got diagrams laid out of the hydraulic schematics, the electronic schematics, and you can tell that there's the YouTube channel. You can tell there's a ton of time and effort put into the troubleshooting to keep the customer up and running. Mm-hmm. And out of all the short lines that we carry, so far it seems Hardi has extremely high quality back end support, which is crucial for me.
I agree.
Being a salesman,
I agree, and that's our biggest struggle as far as being salesmen is knowing where to go find the information. Well, you guys have already kind of helped us out with not only this dealer training, but also helping us figure out where the information is and telling us who this is the guy you need to call. He'll know this, he'll know that. That's who you call for that. If you need something else, just something a little simple, call him. There you go. So that helps.
And we're a little different at Fennec Equipment. The sales guys are also the support guys. Mm-hmm. Sure, we've got techs in the shop that when things get hairy, we call them in. But we're the first line of defense because when you sell the product, who's the customer going to call? Well, he's going to call a salesman. Yep. He doesn't have the guy in the shop's number. And so we try to troubleshoot it and get pretty familiar with the product. So if we don't know, we need some place to go other than our shop guys, because 9 times out of 10, they are buried deep in enough work. So yeah, that's very impressive. And I want to bounce around. We can talk product all day long, but I also want to jump into what got Mike here today. Not only why you're physically here right now recording the podcast, but what were your steps? Did you farm growing up, and how in the world did the application of CEO for Hardi slide on your desk?
Yeah, it wasn't out of the newspaper, I can tell you that. So no, it maybe an interesting story, but so kind of a small town guy. Mom and dad had a small cattle operation, but dad had a day job, mom had a day job. We weren't making a living off of that. So, but grew up in rural America for sure.
What kind of cattle?
Just beef cattle.
Yeah.
Mixed breed beef cattle.
Awesome.
So, yep. So again, that wasn't anything to do with our livelihood, but went to college, went to Purdue University, had the desire to go be an industrial tech guy. I wanted to go sell big pieces of equipment. Work for a GE type corporation was my end goal. $1 million plus pieces of equipment sales at a time. And when I got out of college, I got in an outside sales role and quickly learned that I had no business being in a big corporation. Politics and decisions that I had nothing to do with all of a sudden were going to affect my life. And I figured out that wasn't the way I was wired. And the other thing that I learned pretty quick is if you're going to sell, you have to learn the operations side first, in my opinion. I did not want to sell anything that I didn't know how to use, that I didn't understand what I was doing with the product. If the product wasn't good, that first job I had, we sold some products that weren't great products, and I couldn't do it. Made a sales call down at Equipment Technologies. They make the Apache self-propelled sprayer. And when I walked in the door, turned out I knew the people that had started the company and owned it at the time. Kind of a long story short, ended up working there roughly about 6 months later. So I spent 19 years of my career with ET. And I did everything. I worked in the shop for 3.5 years in quality control. And that kind of gave me the background to understand product knowledge, understand how rate control works, understand how GPS works. I was part of the group of people, certainly not by myself, but I was part of the group that we put the first factory installed auto steer on an Apache. It was a Raven product. We worked with Montgomery Industries before Raven bought them and became the auto boom system that has now evolved into XRT. So I was in the early days of a lot of that, got exposure to that, and had the opportunity to go start a retail operation in Illinois as a part of ET. But did that for 8 years. So I ran a retail dealership there, moved my family, repped Apache. We sold BBI products over there, repped GVM for a period of time. So that really changed my whole world, to go from the manufacturing side of the world and, here's what it looks like when it's clean and neat in the factory, to this is how the product's being used, and riding in the cab with the farmer day in, day out. And kind of similar to your operation, ours, we had one rule, and nobody could ever say, that's not my job, right? If the phone rang and a customer needed help, that's what we did. Side note story, when we first moved into this old junky building, we didn't have a voicemail system, and the guy came in and said, it's going to be $6,000 for a voicemail system. We had like 5 people working there at the time, and I go, oh, come on, man, we're not going to spend $6,000 on voicemail. So at the end of every day, I would forward the office phone to my cell phone. And then that just stuck. So every day for 8 years, when our office was closed, every call that came into that office went to my cell phone. So I knew what was going on at every moment with the business. Yep. And you could feel the pain points coming in. When service got overwhelmed, I had to call my salespeople and go, guys, you got to help.
Right.
It may be for a day or two or a week, but y'all got to help.
Right.
Parts people, same way. Our office manager, we meet technicians out in the field, run them parts. It was an all hands on deck kind of business, and eventually we ended up, I think, with 15 employees at the peak. And you learned a lot about how retail business operated, and that really changed my whole way of thinking. So kind of fast forward about another 5 or 6 years, I continued to kind of advance my way a little bit through ET and get exposure to different things. ET got purchased by Excel Industries out of Paris, France. They happen to own Hardi as well. So this parent corporation, which really ran their businesses as a federation of businesses, there wasn't a whole lot of cooperation there, but I could see I had a little bit of a vision there that there could probably stand to be some more cooperation, and I got interested in potentially doing something with another one of the group companies. So a little reluctantly, it was a hard decision to leave ET to go to Hardi. To make that switch, but made that switch in January of 2019, kind of pre-COVID. So we've gone through a lot since then, but that's how I kind of landed in that role. So the opportunity was presented to me, and I felt like I had the background to do the job some justice. So
on the retail side out there, you guys were just selling equipment, basically?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yep. And so mainly application, I take it. So that business structure had to be, like you said, extremely similar to what we're doing today.
Yep.
Yeah.
The one difference that we had, we were owned by one of our manufacturers. So ET owned the company. We ran it as a retail brand. We ran it as a line eye sprayer, and it did quite well. But when we were very slim product focused, it was tough. That's a tough way to earn a living. Was if you have too narrow of a focus on your product, you go in a down sales cycle for self-propelled sprayers, and everything's hurting fast. So,
right.
Yep.
For us, a lot of people say that you can't outsell your service team, and that's true. There's definitely times of the year, like right now, when like this morning, I started off in the shop this morning, starting to put a piece together. You can outsell your service team, but then someone else has to step in.
Yep.
And this is a time of year where, like Cody and myself, we're kind of on the service team today, and we will be. Sure, there's sales to be had, but you can't send sales guys out on the road when you've got sold equipment needing finished up and and done. So it's constantly a rat race. It's a good position to be in when you have potentially outkicked your coverage, but it's better than being the other way. But that's a line that we walk all the time. We'll sell, and then all of a sudden here comes season. Now we're service. But it's a fine line to walk. What all, being CEO, what all are you in charge of at Hardi today?
So we made a tough decision, would have been about 2 years ago now. We had a factory in Davenport, Iowa. It was about 140,000 square feet under roof. So we were doing all our manufacturing there, assembly for the most part. So we'd bring in a mix of finished goods that are ready to be bolted together, some raw material that are waiting to be powder coated and assembled. And we had done that in that factory for many, many years. But our volumes, with the up and down cycles of ag, our volumes did not dictate that we could justify that big installed base of employees in that big footprint of, I'm going to answer your question indirectly, but so we had all this infrastructure for a lot higher volume base than what we were performing at. So let me answer that question first before I jump to that one. But so all sales, support, manufacturing ultimately, and then the distribution network. So anything that happens on this continent, ultimately, I toe the line for it.
Yep.
Now, obviously, I got a great team that actually does all the real work. I end up with the responsibility for it. So
Yep.
But day to day, ultimately, I really kind of keep my eye on the sales team. You guys met James Smith, and James,
Yep.
our product support manager. Mm-hmm. Fantastic job on the support side. So we combine parts and service into a single entity, and we call it product support now. So that's been really good to kind of have that singular minded. And it is product support. It's what happens after the manufacturing side, and then James's team takes over from there. We have a great office structure, so I don't have to intervene a whole lot there. We've got a little bit of engineering team, and we got a small marketing group, but beyond that, it's the sales team really that does it. But just as you saw today, we're kind of like you guys. We're pretty integrated. Tim Urena, who's your territory manager, Tim does a really, really good job of kind of balancing that support and sales, because Tim is a natural salesperson. I mean, that's what his heart is in. You can tell it.
Yeah.
But to sell our products, you have to support them.
Right.
So that's part of the job.
Right.
Yeah, you have to know them, and
Yep.
and that's where everything that we really deal with, we feel like we're experts in them, because if you're not an expert in something, then how can you sell it? That's our viewpoint.
Well, I think that bleeds with application in general. Mm-hmm. Like, there's certain things that you can sell and really not know anything about it, and you can get by with it. Application equipment, that's not one of them. Mm-hmm. When a guy goes to the field with a new piece of application equipment, you're going to know it. Yeah. Like, hey, what's this do? What's this? Is this right? There's just a lot of things going on. I mean, you're making an important pass, and which is, it's obvious why you need the in-depth product support that you guys do. But there's a lot of companies that cut some corners there.
Sure.
Whereas you guys do not.
Well, and I think that, and I haven't even mentioned the folks that are overseas that are supporting us, right? We're a very small operation here in the U.S. and Canada. But
Okay.
if you look behind us, right, the parent corporation in Denmark, it's always an impressive place to take people, because they go, oh my gosh, yeah, here's this giant factory where they're turning raw steel into finished goods sprayer out the back door. The parts support operation that we have in France, we have another manufacturing operation in Australia, we have a sales and service and support office in Germany. You don't see all that when you're here in the U.S. You see what's right in front of you.
Right.
But it's a big global corporation.
So basically, you have welded components coming into what location in the United States?
So when we closed the manufacturing operation in Davenport, we actually combined it with the operations side of equipment technology, so the Apache sprayer. So ultimately we kind of quote unquote outsource our assembly operation to the ET team that does assembly as well. which was a good transition because I knew those folks very well. I knew that we couldn't sustain the way we were, and this was a way to trim some of those fixed costs out and put what I call right size the business. Right, the business was bigger than we could support, so we right sized the business to the operation. We got people that really know how to manufacture, how to assemble very well. And ET is a very similar company to what we do. They don't do any cutting, bending, or powder coating. They'll do welding and assembly. At Hardi, we did no cutting, bending, welding, but we did powder coating and assembly. So we were used to bringing in things that are just about ready to be bolted together.
I see.
And then what do you do with it? And how do you package it? How do you freight it? How do you get it to the dealer network? How do you support it? And so kind of both operations were very similar in how they worked.
ET, they own kind of a unique sprayer as well. Mm-hmm. They've got a niche deal, kind of like Hardi, but that mid-size self-propelled. What all things is ET into? I think they've got like some online sprayer part stuff. What all do they do?
Well, finished goods wise or whole goods wise, it's singular product. It's the Apache sprayer, and I have a variety of models there. But yeah, so I started that retail operation in 2006, and very quickly it spawned to more retail locations. So I believe it's 9 physical locations now that we have throughout the U.S. and Canada that do retail sales. And I think you might have heard me say earlier today, one of the things that keeps me up at night is how to get your product to market. I continually stress about how do we take what we believe is a great product and get it to the people that can use it. And we have to have that distribution network there. When we founded ET, one of the problems early on is it took a special dealer to be able to handle our types of products. You had to have a sales department, a parts department, a service department. And you couldn't probably be selling a competitive sprayer because you probably didn't have the capacity for that. So it was really difficult to find the right distribution partners that would work for us. So ultimately, out of necessity, we created our own stores. So we started that store in Illinois. Pretty soon, one was opened in Kentucky, then the second was opened in Kentucky, and it just kind of grew from there. So it's that product and all of its support features. But when those retail operations started growing, our volumes in Hypro, T-Jet, Banjo, Raven, those type of components started growing too, as did our purchasing power. Mm-hmm. And that's when online sales become a thing, and now all of a sudden we're going, wow. And I say we, I was watching it, other people that really knew what they were doing, I was watching them do their work. But that team there did a great job of recognizing the fact that, hey, we have things that folks want to buy, and we need to give them easier access to them. So they started SpraySmarter.com, and SpraySmarter is kind of the retail arm of that. I don't want to say the anti-Hardi, but very different from what Hardi does. Those are the non-unique products that are ubiquitous to the majority of the sprayers that are in North America, and they give a very easy access to those components, because it's very difficult for all of your retailers at every county in Ohio or every county in Indiana to have that inventory at your fingertips for that season that lasts, 90 days, 120 days.
Right.
It's almost improbable to happen. We've almost every industry has gone to some type of centralized distribution, and that's the centralized distribution for us. Is we can stock those components in a single place and either get them out on an as-needed basis to those retail locations or sell them via the website, and it gets folks the parts that they need in the most efficient manner, and hopefully provides for that good customer experience too.
Right.
If your parts are broke and you go to the store and they don't have what you need, now what do you do?
Right.
Today, you go on the internet and you look those parts up
and you find them.
And you find them.
Is that Spray Smarter stuff is that a popular website? Is that really going?
Yep.
There's times when I've needed something, maybe I couldn't get my hands on a Raven RCM or something, and you Google that, and Raven RCM that is, and you get Spray Smarter or whatever it is, and I always wondered how that online sales of those parts went.
It was a conscious effort because we had these retail brands out there too, right? So you had Illini Sprayer Company, you had Ohio Valley Ag, you had High Plains Apache, which Southern Application Management. Those were all retail brands that ET owned. And do you go put a skin on that and make it all look like 4 different retail brands or 5 different retail brands, or does it make more sense to have a singular retail brand? And I think that ET did a really good job at that point in time and said, look, let's not mess around with the semantics of this. If we make one platform that the customer can go to, it doesn't need to look different in Ohio than it looks in Indiana or it looks in Illinois. It can look the same. The customer is sharp enough to kind of see through whatever that main page looks like.
Right.
Just give the folks the parts that they're looking for in an efficient way.
Right.
Yep.
That's very interesting. Of course, being a small dealership like we are, and of course you always feel like, you know, what do I do with all these extra parts like you did there? I need to stock them, but how can I distribute them everywhere? And we've always kicked that around with, you know, some of our Yetter parts, some of the Salford parts. So I was always curious about how those things work, but you got to find the niche and really run with it, you know, build the website and all that. So there are some barriers to entry for that. And of course it takes a team, a big team and an army to get all that done. So we're not quite there yet, but maybe someday.
Yeah, and it's been interesting. I don't really get involved in that side of the business. I watch it happen, and it's interesting to see the people that are buying those products online. There'll be a run on these hand rinse jug or inductor cones, and it turns out brewers are using these to brew beer with, and somebody on a brewing website said, hey, here's a spot where you can get this inductor cone or this hand wash thing.
Right.
And the next thing you know, you just sold 150 of those things, and you have no idea why.
Yeah.
Industrial users, so factories, other people that are making industrial equipment, they're using Banjo products. They're using stainless steel fittings. They're using, for all things, worm gear clamps that maybe aren't as easy to find online as a lot of other things are. And we have them right there, and we tell people what our stock is so they don't place an order for something and, oh, wait, we don't have that. So,
Right.
Yep, they do a good job with it, really.
Yeah. That is impressive. You know, sometimes we take it for granted. Everyone has their own place where they get stuff. And, you know, I'm sure there's someone in some other industry talking right now about, you know, yeah, we know how to get this, maybe coffee cups. But if I needed some, I would just Google it and probably buy it from their warehouse. So everyone has their place. But to have a universal deal like that is pretty unique. I always wondered who in the world started that website, to be honest. And there was actually a time when I think I called ET and dug into it really deep to try and find who developed that. And you know, being CEO today, you're managing a lot of people. And you said you started right when COVID had started.
Yeah, just before the year before. So I had a full year under my belt when it hit.
So COVID, of course, has changed a lot of things. I'll ask a question that has a lot of different phases to it. You know, today there's a shortage, quote unquote, of things, and they're hard to get. In your industry, what is the real cause of the shortage, and what is Hardi doing to get around that corner?
Well, there's no one cause, but I can tell you a couple of simple things. So when the world shut down for, let's say, 45 or 60 days, so everything stops, factories are closed, there's trucking not happening, all these things stop. You would say, well, everything didn't stop. Only certain things stopped. And you take one of those pieces of the puzzle out and everything else keeps moving, you're going to run into a real big problem at some point in the future. And so let's just take hydraulic cylinders, for example. All Hardi hydraulic cylinders come out of Italy. Do you remember what was going on in Italy in 2020?
Yeah.
So they're not going to work. They're not making any hydraulic cylinders. We're still feeling the effects of that. You just can't take off work and I'm not saying that folks weren't willing to work,
right?
But they were told not to, right? We're
right.
told not to go to work. It's the safest thing with the information we had at the time not to go to work and not to fire those factories up. And that thing has a long tail on it. It's still happening. Shanghai, China, right? We're shut down. They're shut down right now. What are those factories making? Are they making those coffee cups that you're looking at there? Or that electrical connector that seems to be a continued global shortage? Or the plastic Deutsch clips? Or you name it. So you take that and you compartmentalize it and go, okay, so you shut down industry for 45 or 60 days or more. And then behind that, you take a year plus, well, we're actually probably pushing 2 years into it now.
Right.
Trucking and shipping disruptions. So people that have opted out of the workforce, people that have made career changes away from trucking and global supply chain, and you take those trucks off the road for a period of time, look at that disruption that creates. On top of all that, so those two things are enough. But then on top of all that, the global spend to keep all of our economies from collapsing, right, which was necessary, but obviously it was overdone. But it's not something that, I would not want that responsibility to have to meter in those funds to know when enough is enough and when enough is not enough.
Right.
I can't imagine having those worries every night as you're trying to go to sleep. But so you take the shutdown of industry, couple that with trucking, and for our situation, international freight. So we're shipping container freight, which used to be 5 weeks door to door. We've had 11 and a half, 12 weeks for containers to get door to door with very little visibility in between. So how do you plan for that in a manufacturing world? You can't.
Right.
In a cyclical business, mind you.
Right.
So, because we go up and we go down, and then we're seasonal on top of that.
Yeah.
And then you take this enormous spike in demand that was caused by spending by the U.S. government, right? We gave a lot of money into our space. And then on top of that, commodities went up, which put money in farmers' pockets. So you took the spend plus the increased commodity prices. And so we've got unprecedented demand behind all of that. And anytime you have a shortage in high demand, it's going to be tough. But then you throw in the reasons for those shortages, and they're not done yet. We're not done with those disruptions yet. And then, my gosh, behind that, you got labor issues and everything else. That it has been a challenge for us for probably 6 to 12 months. We were fighting a labor shortage where we could have used more people. We had enough material, and pretty quickly, once we got the people, we ran our material to the point where now it's a material issue for us. So,
yeah, that's everything you explained is pretty much what I've heard. Everyone has their own reasons because it's different for every business.
It is.
But it has affected pretty well everyone. Earlier today, you mentioned that you can't be really looking at what's happening today. You need to look out on what's going to happen in 9 months. Given what you just said about the shortages and everything, and you said it has a long tail on it, when does the tail end, and what does that look like for ag? I
wish I knew. I really did. Unfortunately, my personal belief is when and I'm not good at predictions, so I'll just tell you that if I could tell you those types of things, I probably wouldn't have to work for a living. But,
right.
Unfortunately, when we see manufacturing capacity catch up to demand, it's likely to be a decrease in demand that's going to cause that.
Right.
And it's going to be a decrease in demand, whether it's industry spending or inflation has got us to some degree, or just uncertainty, right? That's in our world, when farmers are uncertain, they stop. They just pause. They're pretty conservative folks, and they say, look, if I don't know what a year or two is going to bring, I'm just going to pause for a minute. That decreases demand, and ultimately manufacturing capacity will catch up. So that's not necessarily a good thing. Let's try and fix the supply thing with good demand that we have today.
Right.
What's that going to look like? I'm a capitalist at heart. I think the market will solve the problem, which means we will put spending, we will make investments in whether infrastructure or inventory or increased freight expenses that we talked about. We're air freighting a lot today. Industry will solve the problem. Ultimately, capitalism will solve the problem.
But do you think, and this is something I wonder about, because we've been doing it for the last 2 years, and we talk about it all the time. We have the inventory. We can do this. We can do that. Do you think that in this time you try so hard to keep things pushing out the door, to keep things rolling when everyone else is struggling, and try and get ahead of that curve, that you overshoot it? And all of a sudden, the tail ends, the demand drops, and here you have become extremely efficient because you've been trained for the last 2 years. You got to be efficient. All of a sudden, demand drops. There's uncertainty. Then what? Are are we working too hard to get around this short-lived, I know it seems like it's dragging on forever, but this short-lived problem that when we come out on the tail end, you kind of get to where you guys were in Davenport, Iowa, where you're like, okay, we have all this, but is that sustainable? Because today what we're doing is we're not only supplying our own customers, but we're supplying all the other customers that used to buy from the dealerships that are no longer willing to stick their neck out on inventory. That's what's building us today.
Yeah.
So what happens when the dealers who used to be able to get by not stocking stuff because you could get something door to door in 5 weeks, when their lack of motivation, lack of wanting to go do business, when that starts to work for them again, what do you do then? And all of a sudden, all the inventory just doesn't make sense. That's what I wonder.
Well, I think we're all a product of our experiences, right? So hopefully, as we age, we get a little bit smarter as time goes. I would hope anyway. I feel like I have a little bit anyway, maybe just a smidge. But so I think our customers are very similar. They know who took care of them when nobody else did.
Yeah.
And I think folks will remember that. So I want to answer this from two perspectives. I'm going to answer it from your perspective first. And this might seem a little odd, but there's a difference between being, I'm going to call it hungry and aggressive, and being reckless.
Yeah.
You guys are not being reckless. You're being hungry and you're being aggressive, but
Yeah.
I don't see recklessness here. If you told me that you were going to buy 180 acres behind the shop and start stockpiling equipment, and you were down at the bank and you were, getting a huge line of credit out, that I would start to question that.
Right.
And you're not even close to that point. What you're doing is you're making an assessment, probably week to week, month to month. Where are we at on inventory? What does our gut tell us? Because again, you're a product of all your experiences, and you can have all the Excel spreadsheets you want and all the forecasts you want, and I guarantee you every model that everybody will build you will be wrong.
Right.
Your gut will tell you a good part of the way of what it is that you need to do. And I think you guys are the folks that are doing that gut check and going, okay, we're not going to overextend ourselves, but we're going to capitalize when the time is there. Mm-hmm. And the time is now for you guys. And hats off to you for having the guts to do it, because it's that fear. Some folks that maybe they got burnt in the past, that they can't or don't want to have that fear again, that they're going to end up overstocked. So that's the way I see the world from your perspective, which may or may not be accurate, but that's the way I think you guys are operating. For like Hardi, for instance, us too, we're a product of our experiences, so we know what it's like to ramp up. We know what it's like to put another addition on the building when you couldn't quite justify it. And eventually those decisions, when you go a little bit too hard, too fast, will come back and bite you. And ultimately, Hardi wasn't hurt in the end. Fortunately, everybody's, we're still operational, we're still supporting product, we're still selling product, but we're a heck of a lot stronger today than we were maybe 3 years ago, mm-hmm. right? We're in a better financial position. We're in a better structural position, that in the next down cycle, which will come eventually. I don't know when. Hope it's a long time from now, but it will come. We're in a much, much stronger position. This has been, we talk about these products that are 30, 40 years old. I don't know how long this thing's going to go on, but at least that many more, I would certainly think,
Right.
I'm not going to see the end of this in my career. I certainly hope not. It's too good of a product. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah. The products that Hardi is making today, like you said, have been around for a while. I mean, it's a pull type sprayer, mm-hmm. 3-point sprayer. We saw the Mega today. It's kind of a newer product. What other things, in a lot of things or one thing I know of that a lot of people don't know about is the Hardi self-propelled sprayer. Mm-hmm. What other things are there out there? Maybe they're on the horizon, maybe they're on the whiteboard, but what is down the road for Hardi? If you are looking for more innovation, you see a lot of different things in sprayer technologies, the Exact Apply, the See and Spray. where's Hardi at on stuff like that? Does that fit the niche?
So from the global perspective is different than the local perspective for us. So here's a perfect example. Is we brought some Navigator I units into the U.S. a couple years back. So that the Navigator is a smaller chassis, smaller frame machine than the Commander is. So steering is an enviable feature set that the Commander had available that the Navigator didn't in North America. The Nav I for us was a way to get steering on a Navigator. Something else that we had customers talking about, individual nozzle control. The Nav I had those features. It had an electric valve on the inlet side, so you could tell it, I want to put 500 gallons in it, and the valve will close at 500 gallons. So we had what I would call the bulk of the latest technology that we put on a trailed sprayer, and we didn't get any traction from it. I feel like we marketed it pretty hard, but I think what we figured out is one of two things. We either hit a price point that people were not willing to pay in a trailed sprayer for that feature set of technology. They liked the technology, but the price point pushed them over the edge, and they said, well, if I'm going to spend that much, I'm going to go to a self-propelled machine.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The other thing that I think may have been, and you never know the real reasons why, but it might be, thanks for solving the problem that I didn't have. Right? Is the guy that buys our product, he wants a fairly simple product that's going to work for a very, very long period of time. Mm-hmm. It's going to be pretty much trouble-free. It's going to be pretty much easy to work on. And then you start throwing all these sensors and all these stepper motors and all these complexities on a machine, and you've changed what the identity of that product is. So it didn't really fit in our market. So what's Hardi working on globally? They're working on all those things that you're talking about. Fortunately, with the Excel group, is we have a number of sprayer companies that are all in the same ownership group. So they're working on camera technology at a group level. So ultimately, if they solve that problem, then we can all share in that technology eventually. But will we see that trickle down into the U.S. On a trailed sprayer? I could see us making it an option at some point in time. But what the last several years have told me is our core buyer, maybe that's not the feature set that they're looking for.
Yeah.
Because we had it available and it got no traction.
Yeah.
So, Hardi works on the things that are going to impact the most people. So from a global perspective, they just released the Aeon product about a year ago. So the high spec, big capacity, very expensive trailed sprayer. I'm not even going to try to bring that product to North America because the market's already pushed back on that type of cost for me. And I straddled that line with self-propels. I sold self-propels with ET for a number of years. I know the market very well. I actually work with both companies currently, so I have a role at ET today. When we got rid of manufacturing, it created some capacity with my time that I could share roles between ET and Hardi. So I get to kind of see both sides of the fence of it. So we'll bring technology that makes sense, but it can't, at Hardi, it can't take away from what our core buyer is really looking for when they buy one of our products.
Yeah. The best thing to take from that, in my opinion, is the fact that you know your product, know who you are. That can be a hard pill to swallow. It's like learning that you don't want every sale, in a way.
It's terribly hard to say no to people.
Right.
It is.
Right. But when you can finally figure out your market and who you are, there's enough sales out there for everyone to be fed. But whenever you figure out who you are, who your market is, and what you are and what you aren't, when you can distinguish that's when you roll, in my opinion. That's when you can say no to that and extremely confidently say yes to that. And that's when you can make some really good decisions, in my opinion. And that's when I think, we've been approached by several companies, or we have approached several companies about selling their product. We're an equipment dealership, so why not just combine, just load it up, you know. Well, luckily, you know, most of the time Dad's there to swing the hammer and say, no, you're a ding dong, you know, don't do that. So looking back, it's like, man, I'm so glad we didn't start selling that product, or, you know, there's no way that would have fit us. But
Right.
you know, sitting through the training today, you know, he's like, yeah, here's your flow meter, here's your valve, and, you know, ISO this. I'm like, geez and Pete's, this is just right up our alley.
Right.
You know, application with what we're already doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I think it's going to add to the mix. But what I wanted to say there is it's impressive that your mindset is going to what you are and what you aren't.
Well, you mentioned self-propelled. So let me tell the story of Hardi self-propelled. So as the market got really, really hot in, I'm going to say 2011, 2013, that time frame, you know that time frame, right?
Oh, yeah.
$7 corn, things were doing really well. Hardi had self-propelled sprayers in Europe. They were selling self-propelled sprayers in Australia. They bring self-propelled sprayers to the U.S. Not bad products. They're fine products. They just weren't products that were feature set and fit with an American farmer. Very European-centric, European controls. It felt different.
Right.
And this was not a market that said we need more sprayers in it, right? There's enough self-propelled sprayers on the market to satisfy demand.
Right.
But, you know, at that time, the market was probably, 8,000, 8,500 units. That's a pretty good size market.
Yeah.
And you could say, okay, if we can get 5 or 10% of that, that's enough to keep us fed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's right. But your customer base and our dealer base, which our dealer base is, your guys are not our prototypical dealer. Our dealer base is a few specialists like you guys, but then a whole lot of John Deere and Case dealers that they're doing tractors, combines, planters, self-propelled sprayers, and these things, and they also sell Hardi. And they're successful at it. They do a very good job for us, but they don't want to take on another self-propelled line. You guys are, you know, you're kind of in the sweet spot. We had a lot of smaller businesses. We're talking 3 to 5 employees that are selling our products. They can't take on a self-propelled sprayer and get 2 service trucks and a dedicated salesperson or 2. It'll cripple that company to go out and sell one every other year.
Yeah.
So our distribution network wasn't set up for it. The product didn't meet our market's needs. Ultimately, this supply chain and manufacturing cycle was too far away. So we couldn't affect when product was getting built. Was it going to make it here on season by time? And all the things that are related to that. Oh, and here's the innovation that the product has to have to meet our market. Wait, our volumes aren't enough to dictate that.
Right.
So eventually, and that was a really, really hard decision that we made when I joined Hardi, was to say, no, we're not good at this. It's not a profitable segment of our business. It's not good for our dealers ultimately. And that's a hard thing to say. And I've talked to a lot of Hardi self-propelled owners that are very happy. And you know, so I don't have angry people calling me going, hey, I didn't like your product, or the dealer didn't take care of me. It was a very satisfactory situation, but ultimately it wasn't a win-win-win for everybody. And if everybody's not winning in it, eventually it's not a good idea. So it forced us to create an infrastructure that wasn't, when the down cycle hit, it wasn't sustainable. One of the things that when I first came in the company, I told people all the time, what we're doing today is not sustainable. I'm not saying we need to go make drastic changes, but long-term, this is not sustainable. Mm-hmm. So we sold our way through the self-propelled equipment, which took a period of time to do that, but we decided we're going to do it the right way. We're going to get the machine field ready. We're going to cooperate with the dealer. We're going to make sure that when the retail consumer buys it, they buy it eyes wide open for what the situation is. We matched the prices to market, which was painful for us, but that's unfortunately the product's worth what somebody is willing to pay for it. So we did those things, and I think we did it in an honorable way. So, but those were hard decisions to make, right? And like I said, I know the self-propelled business, and it's hard to walk away from that volume. But if you're not doing a good job with it, and ultimately everybody's not going to be happy at the end of the day, then you're probably on the wrong path.
Right. So you've been in application for a long time, sprayers, you name it. What's one of the bigger changes that you've seen just here in the last 5 years in I'm talking mainly the farmer practices and what they use sprayers for. What's something you've seen change?
I think that just the general sophistication of the farmer themselves. When I got started in the early days, when you go to a farm, I remember seeing the first auto steer when I saw farmers using it on a tractor, and then I remember seeing the first RTK system, and I go, that's a game changer. Auto steer's nice, but this is a game changer. And the customer that I met that originally was trying to install that WASP-based aftermarket auto steer system, that's a different customer today. The customers that I see today are more your guys' age, right? That it's a father-son, it's a grandfather and a son, it's an uncle and a nephew, it's an uncle and a niece, it's a father and his daughter. Whatever that makeup is there's getting to be somebody younger in the operation that understands the technology and is willing to utilize that ultimately for a more efficient business and higher yields, right? Because if it's not going to make you more money or grow you more grain, it's just a toy.
Right.
So it has to make money and put bushels in the bin. And so the sophistication of the grower is probably the single largest thing. And that can be anything from, variable rate technology to cover crop for folks that are trying to capture nutrient in the winters. Remember people starting to do variable rate seeding. And the first example I heard of that was a disaster. The guy that did it, he went and put all of his data in from 10 years. And he said, okay, these hillsides, they always burn up. And these bottoms, I never feel like I have enough seed in there. And he's like, so I'm going to pour the seed in the bottoms and I'm going to lean it up on the hills. And it happened to be an extremely wet year, and choked out the bottoms with water and starved the tops because he finally had sufficient moisture. But you go to, it's like you go to war with the army you have. So he went to the field with the data that he had. And that particular year, it didn't work. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It just didn't work that particular year. So the level, I see farmers checking, their grain bin moisture with iPads.
Right.
That's not something you saw 10 years ago.
No. Right. Yeah. Or even 5.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd see guys out there with the old yellow. I remember the old yellow, just moisture testers. They'd take a scoopful, put it in, screw it together, and good to go.
Which are still common today, still. But
I sold a lot of those mini gags. So.
Yeah. Right. And we deal with Ag Express down there at Sulphur Springs, and you just look at how their business is growing. I think that kind of tells the story too, on electronics and cables and all of the computers that you're throwing at these things. For us, there's not too much stuff that we do anymore that doesn't have a 9-pin ISO plug on it. Yep. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad. It can be a nice, sleek way to do things, but then, of course, with some electronics, you do get some fumbling around of stuff. But you're right. If there's one thing out there that can make a guy more efficient, make it easier to do, if he can watch that screen, he's going to do it. And it seems that people are definitely willing to make the investment in the technology if it's going to help them grow more corn, be more efficient, or make the pass have less anxiety. I feel like rate controllers do a lot of that. Yeah. Is an RC2000 more accurate than a ground drive pump on a planter? Yeah, it probably is. But I think what it's really doing is giving you more information. You've got a live flow meter. You've got, your sections. You just know a lot more, and it gives you that peace of mind and not worrying. Just like the red balls. We're talking basic stuff here, but sure, they tell you when it's blocked, but they don't yell at you or hit you in the head.
Right.
You still have to figure it out, but it's that anxiety thing, I think, that, doing the stuff that you do, when you've got that much money on the line, you're nervous out there, and I think a lot of this equipment is designed to reduce that, and guys are going to spend money to do that, in my opinion.
Well, if you think about it, right, so let's just take $4 or $5 corn in the Midwest. What has happened to the price of seed, land, fuel, fertilizer, all these other things? And let's take this current spike aside. We're going to land back in those lower numbers for corn at some point in time.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Are the cost of all those other inputs going to go down? Not typically. Some will. Some are cyclical and market based, but is land price going to go down? Is crop insurance going to get any less expensive? So you're going to say no. That the way that those businesses are going to make it is they're going to have to get more efficient, right? If we run our business the way that we ran it 10 years ago, we're not going to make it.
Right.
We have to change.
Yeah.
But that's how, we as humans, we evolved, right? We evolved to the level of what we need to survive first and then thrive after that. Mm-hmm. And you can see the folks that have figured it out,
mm-hmm.
And they sometimes don't even know they figured it out yet. They're just like, I seem to be doing a little bit better than the folks around me.
Right.
It's like a restaurant business, to be honest. Like if you see an owner that's, say like a 70-year-old that has ran his business the constant same way for the last 25 years, well, he only stayed at one particular level. He didn't do anything to innovate himself or anything like that to change with the generations that come through his business. So, and I think you can see that just simply because, we got different people trying to I guess I don't know how I want to say that, but it's basically if you stay constant, you'll never get anywhere. If you stay with innovation, you're always going to be able to see, you're always going to be going up in a way, depending on how you run it.
But you can only gear as far as you can see,
right?
Like what we're doing right now with inventory, what Hardi's doing right now with everything you're doing. You can only do it as far as you can imagine and as far as you can see. We did a podcast with J&M Manufacturing there probably 3-4 weeks ago, and they said something that I thought was pretty interesting. We were talking about the future of J&M and what they're doing, and they made a good point. They said we can design something that we can't physically manufacture. Mm-hmm. With our computers, we can make something that we don't have the manufacturing capacity to build. And so we got to be careful on how far we want to innovate and what products we think we need to develop, because even though they are in manufacturing, they are at the mercy of their capabilities, of their workforce and everything. And every business has your limitation. You have to find the limitation and see if it makes sense to enlarge that and grow it. For us, in the last couple of years, it was our manufacturing side. And I say that, and you're probably thinking, you guys don't manufacture anything. We manufacture a few small things, but it's things like we've got 2 guys who are as handy with a welder as we are with a pen. And we've got a little Lincoln plasma that makes little parts. And it's just little parts that when you're mounting something on a planer and you need a plate, mm-hmm. it'll etch that out. So those little things that we used to have to call a company to draw and make it, we can now spit that stuff out in minutes. And so it was our manufacturing and our assembly side. Our sales have been strong because we had the inventory and we knew the market, and Dad was aggressive. And so sales were always fine, but our bottleneck was manufacturing and getting things that were sold out in an efficient manner.
So you chose to invest to solve
mm-hmm.
your problem, right?
Right.
Yep.
And we invested heavily in service trucks, service guys, everything service in the last 12 months, and it's been huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Adam said, right now we're going to be turning into sales guys, or not sales, service guys here in the next 30 days, 40 days, 50 days, however long this time span lasts for us. And we'll go out on the road, and it wouldn't be, we'll be out in Illinois, because like Gary was telling you today, all those guys farm too. Well, we're the only ones that really don't. So we're basically the service guys on that side of things. So we have to go out and service it. So it's kind of nice for us being sales guys too, being able to do the service side, because it helps us learn the product as well. So
when I did retail, one of my policies was everybody that worked in the sales department had to be able to run the product. You had to be able to go to the field and spray, do a decent job. You don't have to be a professional applicator.
Right.
But my position was, you can't speak from a position of authority if you don't know how to use the product, if you can't accurately do it. Tell people what your preferences are. And I would speak, and I didn't spray a ton, but I sprayed enough to be able to speak in a first-hand manner. When I spray, I like the right-hand boom around the outside because that's what I can see out of that window better.
Right.
I don't like the left boom for whatever particular reason.
Right.
I like to have 2 sets of tips on a machine at all times because if I need to slow down because of rough ground conditions, I don't want to feel like I'm pushing the speed of the sprayer too much.
Right.
So just simple things like that you can speak from the first person, but you got to go bloody your knuckles a little bit on it as well. So
Definitely.
the only way to learn is to learn.
Yeah. And guys around here, they, whether you like to or not, you're going to get out there on the road and you're going to get in the trenches.
Yep.
As your tenure in application grew, and now you're managing application company, what do you think? What was it about you that made you fit the mold of CEO? Was it your experience? Was it your drive? And what is it that you see in other people that are CEOs or on that level that you say, man, he's good at that? And because everyone has their niche.
Myself personally, I'm not sure I can answer that one correctly. I'm not a big vision type of person. I would say I'm much more a very practical person. I like to take complex things and make them simple if I can. I like to take a process that maybe you're very good at, but nobody else in the company knows how to do it. So let's boil it down to 10 steps, and then let's see if we can boil it down to 6, and then let's write it down, and then let's post it. So now I took something that maybe was very mysterious and scary, and now anybody in the company can do it. So that's one of the things that I like to do is, life isn't really that hard, and business isn't that hard. We make it hard on ourselves. If we would spend more time trying to make it easier for ourselves and make it easier to do business, I think it can be easier, but we have to have that as a goal in mind. From a person standpoint, what I look for in a team. From my early days at ET, the group that mentored me there were just fantastic. They were a type of people that would let you fail, let you make mistakes without fear of public humiliation or getting fired or those types of things. And I made plenty of mistakes and still do, but I'm not afraid to make a decision. If a decision needs made, I will make it. And I very much want to surround myself with people that will make decisions. I hate to micromanage. I hate to be micromanaged. If people cannot work independently, then I'm a wrong person to work for, because I'm going to give you the task, and I'm probably going to. I have a lot of direct reports. I have effectively 2 jobs. I'm with 2 different companies. So if you're going to need, I don't want to say constant handholding because that's not a fair statement, but if you need constant help, then I've either not done a good job of letting you know what your job is and get you the tools to do it, or I made a bad choice in the person. And usually it's on me. Like, I didn't give them the tools to be successful. But I look for people that can run independent. They're not afraid. They'll make decisions. They don't take themselves too serious. We like to have fun at work. If you're not laughing and having fun there, something's wrong.
Right.
And both companies have a good culture for, laugh at yourself. If there's fun to be poked, poke at yourself first.
Right.
But when it's time to get down to work, let's work really, really hard. I'll tell people, look, I may not be the smartest person in the room. Rarely am. But I would challenge you to find somebody that will outwork me.
Yeah.
So I'll make it up with the things that I can control.
Right.
Whether it's experience and I need to go get some more, I'll go fix that. If it's I need to have somebody on my team that has a skill set that I don't have, I'll go fix that. But, just hardworking people that like to have fun and ultimately want to take care of the people around them. It's the customer and the consumer and the dealer. We're all in this together, right? This is a long game. Some of these people that I've been working with for 22, 23 years now.
Right.
So it's the same people. And sometimes we've switched shirts and sometimes we switch companies. But, I go to the Farm Progress Show or I go to Louisville and I see some of those people that I called on in early 2000, 2001 when I was out beating the street. And it's the same farmers.
Yeah.
And if I had done that guy wrong early on, it's done.
Right.
You know, that he knows who you are at that point. So to me, it's a long game.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, it is. You said a lot of interesting things there. Not being afraid, because if you're the one making decisions, you're going to fail.
Absolutely.
Or you're going to make mistakes. So the fear, the decisions, and the mistakes, it's all like a triangle. If you're afraid, then you're not going to make any decisions. And if you make the decisions, you're going to make the mistakes. So you can't really fear any of them. So that's really interesting that you say that, because I know a lot of people and have seen a lot of people, whether it's customers or whatever, that won't make a decision because they're afraid. And when you're not afraid of the decision, because you know when you make a decision, you're either going to be right or you're going to be wrong. You can be wrong as long as you learn from it. So then the next time you make a similar decision, you fall to the right side. And making mistakes, I think, is a good thing. You need to fail several times, because you can't be really good at something without being really terrible at it at one point. So that is very interesting, because you see it all the time. The people that are afraid to go further and that are afraid to do things, it's because they don't want to make the mistake, in my opinion.
Well, and as a business leader with employees, you have to be, if you fail, if you make a mistake, you have to be the first person to raise your hand and say, I screwed up.
Yeah.
I take it. It's on me. Don't pass the buck. If ultimately you're in charge and you had the judgment call of what to do there and it didn't turn out right, you have to own it.
Right.
But you just sent a signal to your team, not only that you're fallible just the same as they are, but life's not over when you make a mistake.
Right.
It will go on.
Yeah.
And it's not about whether we make mistakes or not. It's about what we do about it when we do.
Right.
So, you know, I've wronged customers inadvertently before. And when I find out about it, I go, okay, let's figure out what will make you happy.
Yep.
Let's see where I screwed up. And then I learn from that experience and I try not to do it again. You know, I've always been a fan of just being completely honest with people, because like I said, I'm not smart enough to remember all these stories that you got to tell people when you're dishonest. It's way easier for me just to be honest with people. And you know, yeah, it leads to some hard conversations. But again, you know, part of my mentoring when I was coming up is go have those hard conversations and have them first thing in the morning or on a Monday. Don't wait till Friday or don't wait till 3 p.m, because you'll kick it down the road and you won't sleep that next night either.
Right.
So if there's a tough conversation to be had, you know, maybe I made a mistake and I got to fix something. Say it, get it out in the open.
Right.
Or even if an employee's made a mistake, you owe it to them to let them know that, hey, I didn't agree with this. Next time I'd rather you did it this way. But then you followed up with, but I'm glad that you took it upon yourself to make a decision.
Right.
Yeah, because I don't want everybody piled up at my door
Right.
waiting to be told what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me what to do next.
I have done something wrong if that happens.
Yeah. Interesting. You know, on the dealership side, we touched on it a little bit this morning, you know, and I asked the question about what have you seen change in the last 5 years with the farmer? How has it changed with the dealerships and not only for Hardi, but dealerships in general? Of course, the one I'm most familiar with here in Ohio is the Ag Pro story.
Yep.
But that's not the end of the line, in my opinion. What are you seeing with your dealers, and how are your dealers changing, and where does this thing end?
Again, I kind of wish I knew on that one too. I think I told your dad earlier today, you know, one of the things that keeps me up the most at night, and this is a Hardi and an ET thing both, is getting that product to market ultimately is one of my biggest stressors in life, because I've seen the dealer network change so much, and we call it dealer consolidation, but it's not just consolidation. So you have the main line, the John Deere, the Case, the New Holland, where either they're closing stores or they're combining under larger entities. They're not letting in short line equipment, or if they do, they're not going to stock that short line equipment. So that's bad for things that I make, things that I want to distribute and get it to market. But also, when we went through an 8-year down cycle, the really small businesses, those 2 to 5 employee dealerships, those maybe 2 to 10 employee dealerships, when that person got to retirement age, they hung it up. And they said, you know what, I've got my farm ground here. I'm gonna rent that out, and I'm gonna go to the house. And it took a lot of good dealerships out nationwide. Maybe it didn't affect locally as much, but when you look at this across the U.S. and Canada, it took a lot of dealerships out. And it makes it hard for us to get our products to market because we don't have a Fennig equipment dealership on every corner. From an ET perspective, we got a great service partner and dealer in Ohio with Buckeye Application. They've been with ET. We do a little bit different structure here, but we do a structure that works here where we control the sales force and Buckeye does our service and support for us. So that particular scenario works good for us. But we had to get creative, right? Because that situation wasn't working in the configuration that it was. It's the difference between opening your own company stores. Is we didn't do that because we wanted to. We would have sure as heck liked had a third-party dealer that we could have taken our product to because, when I started with a laptop and a folding table and a cell phone, and I had never sold equipment at retail before. That's a heck of a learning curve to go through.
Yeah.
How do you set a dealership up? What do you put in stock? How do you hire your technicians? And I learned by doing. I mean, we started that in a leaky building with a laptop and a folding table, and we built it into an honorable business that I was proud of.
Yeah.
So I've seen that side of it, but I've also seen the unwinding of that too, where when these dealerships go away, and we feel Hardi feels it, and ET feels it too. This deep commitment to these guys that have bought this piece of equipment, or these folks that have bought this equipment out there. We owe it to them to have a support network to take care of them. And that's getting increasingly harder to do. And I'll be candid, I don't know how we're going to solve all this, but I know it won't be a one-size-fits-all, right? So, I mean, Hardi's been selling in Ohio for a number of years, and we've got some good dealers here, but we're losing some too. So if we're not replacing on the backside, eventually we wind up with very few or potentially none.
Right.
I don't see that as happening, but the world's a scary place. Anything can happen. So we have to continue to protect the area as much as we can. Same thing, both companies, that we're going to be creative as we have to be, because we want to be here generations from now. That's our goal.
Right.
Is we want to build a company that can build products that are going to solve customers' problems, that they think it's a good value, they're glad that they bought it, and then be there for them, hopefully to the end of time, right? To
trade that piece in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've seen products come and go. We really have. And the longevity of these companies is that dedication to support, because that first purchase, that's just a moment in time in the relationship.
Right.
That's just a snapshot in the moment of time.
Right.
We talk a lot, ET, we talk about it at Hardi. Our Hardi team says it all the time, and they say it out loud, is, sales sells the first piece of equipment, and support sells everyone behind it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't support that piece of equipment, that person is not going to own it very long.
Right.
The farmer either has the means, the capital, the internet, whatever he needs to have, or whatever they need to have to go get rid of your equipment and go buy something else, because they will do it.
Right.
Because they can.
Yeah. Yeah. They can do it in a heartbeat, just as fast as they bought yours.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's interesting. We see the dealership consolidation or dealer groups forming all the time, more and more every day. And it's interesting. You always hear farmers around that area grumble about it. You hear that people are leaving that dealership and the world's ending, but they just keep buying stores. So something's working. What's working that we aren't hearing about or aren't seeing. But, the green paint sells, people are loyal to it, and I don't know. It seems that the red dealerships are doing it too, though. So I don't know. I don't know. Of course, it makes companies like us, in my opinion, shine, because we carry the products that the large ones don't want to, and so I guess it allows us to do what we're doing. Well,
we have to be content to solve customers' problems on a different scale. If you want to sell 100 sprayers a year, your dealership has to look different than it looks today.
Right.
But if you're going to say, okay, I'm willing to sell 30 sprayers a year, my operation can probably look a whole lot like it looks today. I don't have to go take that big risk. I don't have to bring on 2 more service technicians and grow beyond what I'm capable of. And we grow within our means. I've seen that a lot, is when these businesses sometimes outgrow their means. Anybody can be successful for 6 or 12 months, or look successful for 6 or 12 months.
Right.
Who's there 5 years from now?
Yeah. That's where the rubber meets the road,
Yep.
and you separate the men from the boys. That's for sure. And you see it all the time. It's easy to look successful, but you see these dealerships that have been in business for 100 years maybe. And that stuff like that's impressive. And you look at how they're built and their culture, and that's where you can find the secrets, is the people that they hire, and the backbone of that company is what made it what it is today.
One of the things early in my career, the folks that mentored me impressed upon a lot of us was, you don't have to look like everybody else, right? If you look and act like everybody else and try and be everybody else, but you're not selling what they have, or you don't have the distribution network that they have, those two things don't add up, right?
Right.
You have to work with what you have. You have to work with the gifts that you have, or the people that you have, the products that you have, and then try to be the best at it.
Yep. Yeah, if you're just like everyone else, you're going to not go down the road that you need to go down. You have to pave the road yourself. The road that you need to go down is dirt. You have to pave it. So,
Hardi only makes sprayers. That's it. They don't make spinners. They don't make spreaders. They don't make side dress bars. They could. Certainly they have the engineers and the manufacturing technology to do that. But that intense focus on sprayers has allowed them to engineer that product from tip to tail, and to make the best trailed sprayer on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So
and know it,
and absolutely know that product inside and out, and have the support network inside and out to do that. So that intense focus has led to their success. When ET was acquired in 2016, they were one of the last few privately held sprayer companies in North America. They only made sprayers, right?
Yeah.
They didn't deviate into other product lines. We only wanted to do things that were complementary to what we were already doing. And you got to have a secret sauce. With Apache, the secret sauce was the mechanical drive, the simplicity of the sprayer. With Hardi, I think it's that tip to tail integrated process. That's the secret sauce. Those are the things that are hard to copy.
Yeah.
So not everybody can come in and just copy what you have there.
Yeah.
And for us, if we were going to go try to make a toolbar, we'd go and look at what everybody else is doing on a toolbar and probably make one that looks just about like the one that they make. So what's our secret sauce?
Right.
We don't have any in that particular.
Try to cut them by $1,000.
Yeah.
And
if you're competing on price, that's a tough spot to live.
Yeah. You can't live there long.
No. I remember when seed tenders first came out, and the box seed tenders, and we looked at it and we thought, golly, we can probably make that. That's not too tough. But the same thing is, can we make one that's leaps and bounds better than everybody else in the market and sell it at a price that is competitive? And the answer was no.
Yeah.
Right. So
leave it to J&M and the guys. Yep. That's a big decision that every manufacturer has to make. Dang well in the back room they're talking about new products, and half the products they're talking about are already being made right now, when really they could spend a little bit of time knowing their product better and supporting their dealerships better, and they will gain the revenue that they're wanting to gain by building new products. Mm-hmm. Because the new product that they make, they're probably going to do it about halfway. And so I see a lot of that with manufacturers. I don't have a whole lot more. We're creeping up on about an hour and a half already.
Wow.
But what is it that you thought we might talk about on the podcast that we didn't, maybe? Anything?
I didn't go into it with any expectations. One of the things that I probably don't say enough of, and I would say that the team at Hardi for sure, the team at ET for sure, both teams, because I'm not going to be on a team I'm not proud to be a member of, is the people there that I'm so thankful of. Both of those operations have come through so much change. You know, Hardi with a move in manufacturing, ET with a purchase, you know, I guess 6 years ago now. But if you look at the core of both of those companies, the core people are the same. And that's really important to me, because it's the team that you go to market with. I mean, that's your battle team. And,
Oh, yeah.
you know, it gets rough in the spring. You guys know that, right? It gets rough. It gets hard.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we don't have to run at that pace year round, because it would probably be intolerable. But
Yeah.
I'm super proud and humbled to be a part of those teams. And I'm always impressed when I hear James or Tim or those guys talk that, you know, I'm not your product guy and I'm not your support guy, but, you know, thank God that there's guys like them that take their jobs serious, right? And they're students of their trade.
Yeah.
We use that terminology a lot, is be a student of your trade. If you're going to choose to be in product support, be the best egg-on product support person you can, is know that stuff really, really well. And, you know, no one likes to be buried on the phone all the time taking customer calls, because nobody calls in on customer support line happy.
Right.
They don't call in and say, you know what, it's 70 and sunny and everything is working.
Yep.
But be a student of your trade. Help that person as eager and as best as you can. And, you know, because none of the rest of this stuff happens without those teammates there working towards the common good. So I'm super thankful that I've been a part of some really great teams, and I hope to be for a long time yet. So
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's awesome. I'm excited to get to know Hardi better. Of course, I learned a lot today. I didn't know much more about him other than the yellow and red paint, you know, before today.
Yeah.
And I see it being a long-term relationship, and I can't wait to sell the first sprayer.
Yeah. Excellent.
So,
Not if I beat you first.
well, Cody, come on.
There's still hours left of the day. So
There are. Well, that's all I've got. I appreciate you coming on the podcast. And have you ever listened to one of ours before?
I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to lie about
No,
that.
I absolutely
Okay.
have. Yeah.
Well, hopefully this gives our listeners some more content. And, you know, we're going to spit out podcasts all the time. So this won't be the last one that we drag you into. So
No, bring it on. Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to go down to the manufacturing facility or ET or somewhere next time.
Yep.
And visit there for the next podcast. So we're going to jump off of here and move on with the day.
Yep.
We've been in training this morning, learning more about Hardi, recording the podcast, and now we probably better go sell something.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that's all I've got. Thanks for tuning in.